When we want to design an arch bridge, there's a few ways we could do this. We could design the individual parts, like individual popsicle sticks, and we could move them and rotate them to create an arc. But that's going to take quite a bit of time. So the easier way to do that would be to design kind of the side panel first, like the side arch with a hole in the middle, and then you could always fill in the specific beams that you'd like depending on your design. So the easiest way to do that is going to be to go into part design. We obviously need to put a new body every time we start. And you don't have to, but I would control click and get in the habit of renaming these. So this would be bridge side 1. All right, with that selected, I'm now going to create my sketch. Now, the side of the bridge would not be viewed from the top. It would either be viewed from the front or the back, and either one of those will put you in the XZ plane. So that I'm in the XZ plane, if we want to draw the arch, I'm going to show you a few tools that will be pretty helpful. First thing we want to do is we just want to draw a line. I want to make sure that that line is horizontal. And the next thing I want to do is I want to add an arch. Now you will probably see this button here, which if you create that will allow you to create a circle. But you'll notice that's a circle of a fixed radius. So we can't really draw a custom arch. We can only draw like an arch that has a fixed radius. But that's not what we want maybe. You probably want a little bit more control. So if you click that little down arrow next to it, you have something called endpoints and rim point. And if I do that, I'm going to click on the two endpoints. And then I'm going to decide what I want my arch to look like. Now you very likely have a dimension for your arch. Maybe it's very high arch, maybe it's very low arch. For now I'm just going to click so I get my arch. And if you're ever in a tool, you'll kind of see the little icon underneath the crosshairs and you want to be out of that tool, you simply hit escape on the keyboard and that will bring your cursor back. Now the first thing to realize is when I move these pieces, they do not move together. And that's because these pieces were drawn separately. So the first thing we need to do is we need to use the connect point constraint and click on our points to connect them. Now, in this case, you can kind of see, I can see there are two different dots here. You might not have that. If you don't, you simply click and drag on one of the parts until you have some spacing between them. Now I have the ability to choose these 2 points, and I have my arch. Now if I drag it around, it should move together, which it does. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to fix the length of this because I haven't given any dimensions here. So horizontally, using the horizontal constraint, I would like this to be 24 inches because that is the 2-foot span that we have to cover. So now I've got my scale, 2 foot, and my arch happens to be whatever distance that is. We don't know. Well, my design maybe calls for a specific radius or a specific height. This is where it gets a little bit tricky, but here's what I recommend. As a side note, you'll notice these constraints that appear, like the horizontal and the horizontal distance. You don't have to, but I get in the habit of going into these constraints, which is in the taskbar, highlight pretty much all of them, control click, and I like to get in the habit of hiding my constraints. What you'll notice if you look at the screen is it just takes some of those dimensions away. Those constraints are still there. This is still fixed and will move together. However, it just keeps it less cluttered. So once I know I have everything set, I like to turn those off, but that is up to you. Now, I want to tell the program that this point and this line need to be, in this case, let's say my design is 8 inches at the top of the arch. I want to say that's 8 inches. But the problem is there's no point there, so there's nothing for me to reference. And that's where this comes in. We're going to use the point which is right next to the straight line, and we're going to add a point at the top, and we're going to add a point on the bottom. Now, right now, if I move this, you'll notice those points do not come with it. And that's because they're not connected, so they're not quite reference points just yet. So I don't know who designed this, but large dot places the dots. You've got the small dot, which locks the constraints, and this one here, which is a dot on the line, is a combination of kind of the two of them. So I'm going to click this dot on the line, and I'm going to first click this point, and then I'm going to click on this arch. And I'm going to choose this point, and I'm going to choose this straight line. And what that's done now, if I slide this together, that's now giving me a reference point that I can start to deal with. So now that I have this reference point, vertically, I'll use the vertical tool, I want this point on the arch and this point on the base to be 8 inches. Not 8 feet, 8 inches. So if I do that, now I've got my locked in 8 inches. If I ever wanted to change that, I can just double click on this. I can make it 12 inches. I can make it whatever I want. And now as I slide it around, it should stay the same shape. Again, I'm going to come down here. I'm just going to shut some of these off so that it's a little bit less cluttered. Now, if I end my design right now, and I hit close, I'm going to have my two-dimensional sketch, and I could certainly pad that, and I could get my arch. However, I kind of want the cutout in the middle, because I don't really think most of you have a solid arch. So I'm going to hit cancel here, which brings me back to my main page. Double clicking on the sketch will bring me back in. So what I'd like to do now is I want to kind of cut a hole out of the middle, but I'd like the thickness of the beams on the outside to be uniform, because this should be the thickness of a popsicle stick, which is about 1/2 inch. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to draw that baseline. And I'm going to come use my arch tool, and I'm going to, as best I can, eyeball what I think should be. It looks pretty good, but there's a little bit more thickness here than here, but we'll try and fix that in a second. The first thing we need to realize is, again, these are not connected. So I'm going to move them apart. I'm going to connect that side, and I'm going to force these 2 points together. Now I can do 2 things. I can either set this horizontal, or since I already know this line down here is horizontal, I can also use the parallel tool, saying please make these 2 parallel. All right, so what I'd like to do is I want to make sure the spacing around the outside is as close to a uniform 0.5 inches, because that's the thickness of the popsicle sticks we're using. The problem is, again, I don't have these reference points, so I don't have anything that I can use to tell this program to make these all 1/2 inch, and that's where this dot comes in. So I'm going to place a few dots around the edge of both of these. The more you place, the more accurate your diagram will be. So just kind of use your judgment. Now this is flat, so I really just need like one above this one. I don't need to keep placing these because it's all the same thickness. What I need to do now is slide this over, and I kind of want to balance these points out as much as possible. So if I have one point on this smaller arch, I should try and get a rough corresponding point on the outside arch. No, I'll add these 2 just to be safe. All right, now if I want to connect those, I have to use this second tool. Now this is a little bit tedious, but I got to go around and I need to just click each point and then click the line so it snaps them to the line. So it takes a little bit of time, but it does give me a lot more control over what my design will look like. So it's a little bit annoying, but trust me, once you're done, you will be much happier because you will run into significantly fewer problems. All right, so connect, connect, connect. I believe this needs to be connected as well as these. I think I missed on that one. Doesn't matter if you click the dot first and the line second, or the line first and the dot second. All right, I think that's connected. And I believe I already connected that one before, yes. All right, so again, these ones aren't too bad because they don't take up too much space. But again, I'm just going to come down here. I like to control click and hide those just so it's a little bit cleaner. All right, now what I want to do is I just want to make sure the spacing between each of these dots is as close to 1/2 inch as possible. So the ones that are vertical like this, I'll just use the vertical tool, and I want that to be about 0.5 inches. These ones, which are kind of horizontal, I will choose these 2, and again I want that to be about 0.5. I'll move over here and do the same, about 0.5. The one on the top here, these 2 vertical, so I want them to have a vertical distance of about 0.5. You'll notice for the most part it looks pretty good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use this diagonal one since they're not exactly vertical or horizontal. It's pretty close, 0.53. I might not actually have to do, well, that one's kind of 0.75. I might not have to do all of them. No, let's not do that. Let's try these 2. Whoops. No, I should probably deselect that point. Okay, so then I can choose this tool. Let's try these. 0.5. All right, that looks pretty good. Now, because my dots moved, like if I wanted to make sure this spacing was there, since these dots don't line up anymore, I should probably add 2 more. The closer these dots are to where you want them to be, the better. So I should probably add these dots as I go as opposed to what I did before and add an entire all at once. Because if I set these 2, they're not on top of one another, so I just want to be careful about that. And I will say, let's make that 0.5. So if we turn these constraints off, it looks pretty good. So as long as everything is connected and we have the rough spacing we want, now I can close my sketch. And now if I pad my sketch, now I have this arch that has this hole cut out of the middle. Now the thickness of one popsicle stick is about 0.2 inches, so I'll change that to about 0.2. And now I have one entire side of my arch. If I select that and I copy Control C or Command C and then paste, and that's bridge side 2. Lovely. They're going to be on top of one another right now, so if I turn this off, you don't really see much. I'm using spacebar as a reminder to turn these on and off. What we want to do is we want to separate this. So if I kind of rotate this a bit, and I see the Y-axis down here is what would send it out that way, I'm going to go to Placement, Position, and if I just start to adjust that, you can decide how far apart. Now, I'm going to say about 6 inches because I believe the popsicle sticks are about 6 inches long. And what that does is that now gives you the 2 sides of your arch. And that's exactly what we're looking for. So now all you'll have to do is you'll have to start adding the popsicle sticks in between. In the other video, which talks about the bridge deck or the bridge top, I'm going to show you guys a few things that will make that significantly easier. But this should be enough of a setup in order to start with your design. You can add the top and the base from the other video, and then if you want specific beams placed anywhere within here, then you can just use the part design. And you can use your basic shapes, or you can design a custom part. If you have more questions on that, you can ask during class, or I may have a second video that explains it in more detail.